Welcome, Mama. So, mom rage, that's a thing. If you don't know what mom rage is, or if you haven't experienced it, let me paint you a picture. It's 5 a.m., you just woke up your kid to go 6 hours to a friend's house, and they didn't fall back asleep, and the car ride was fine, but you are ready for nap time. You got to your friend's house, you spent a couple hours playing, and then it was nap time, and you did everything you could to make nap time as smooth as possible. You recreated the sleep environment, you have the white noise, you have everything ready to go. But when it comes time to take a nap, your kid fights you. Literally pushes, kicks. You're alone, you're frustrated, you're stressed from the day of travel, and you snap. If this sounds specific, it's because it is. This was my most recent experience. I felt like a cycle repeater. I felt like a failure. And she confided in me too that she had had similar experiences and that she knew of a lot of women who had had similar experiences. And while this made me feel good in the moment, it made me feel better, it made me feel not so alone, in reflecting on it in the weeks since, I started to wonder why. I have had more women ask me to talk about mom rage than almost anything else. And I have to wonder why. Is it us? Is it motherhood, or is it society? Is it the culture in which we live in that is making motherhood really hard, which is adding so much stress to our lives that we have no choice but to explode? And in having this thought, I started to research. And I found a wonderful article, a 2023 article called A Fire in My Belly, a conceptualization of US women's experiences of mom rage. So in this video, we're gonna break down that research. We're gonna talk about the background of what is mom rage. We're gonna talk about the social expectations on motherhood and how that could play into this. We're gonna talk about most females' experience with anger and how that could be playing into this. And then we'll go over the results of the study. How did these women experience mom rage? What led to it, and how did they interpret it? Before we jump into it, hi, my name is Sam. I'm a matrescence educator and a passionate advocate of motherhood. I believe that you deserve to enjoy motherhood. I believe that you deserve to be seen, and most importantly, I believe you deserve to find yourself through motherhood instead of losing yourself to it. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, if you're looking forward to learning about mom rage, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. For now, let's jump into it. What is mom rage? So from this article, mom rage can be summarized as the uncontrollable outburst of anger, usually relating to motherhood. These episodes often result from feeling powerless, feeling injustice, or just from the chronic stress of mothering. These episodes of mom rage can have far-reaching consequences in the way moms feel about themselves, their psychological health, the way that they feel physically, the way that they interact with their children and their spouses, and the way they see themselves as moms as they navigate the social stigma around mom rage. To understand fully why mom rage is happening, the researchers go into the background of mother work, maternal stress, and maternal expectations. I'm gonna give some surprising information here. Moms often feel stress around parenting. This is often stemming from the emotional, cognitive, and physical stressors of motherhood. There's all of the emotional, really hard things that we experience as mothers. There's also the new buzzword, but is very true, the mental load of motherhood, of all the things we have to think about daily. And if you don't think this is real, check out my video here. And then the physical aspect of being a mother, of lack of sleep, of bearing a child, of carrying around a 40-pound, 2.5-year-old a lot of the time. And despite all of these challenges, there is that pervasive message that we are supposed to be selfless and we are not supposed to let these things bother us because everything we do is for our children and that should be good enough. And this relentless pressure to put our children's needs above all else at all times, all while projecting an image of ease and happiness and calmness, means that we feel we have to manage our emotions at all times, regardless of the circumstances. When we look at the ideal motherhood standard in the US, it's primarily this intensive mothering, which portrays mothers as, quotes, the central figures responsible for their children's emotional, physical, and psychological well-being. Your child is going through something, if your child is experiencing something, really anything having to do with your child, you are the one responsible for it. And that's a heavy load to bear, but that is the societal expectation right now. And this idealized version of motherhood really glorifies self-sacrifice and being selfless, and this unwavering dedication that really sets unattainable standards for moms to meet, that you're supposed to be selfless all of the time, and you're supposed to not care about yourself and your needs at any time. And furthermore, this pressure, along with the pressures of competitive parenting these days and the mommy wars, which, as this article states, are mothers in competition with one another to prove their approach of mothering is the right way, which I talk about this a lot in my mom shame video, which you can check out here, that a lot of times we want validation that our choices were correct, because in motherhood, there really is no immediate payoff that what you're doing is right, that co-sleeping is the right choice, that sleep training is the right choice. And so in order to feel like it's the right choice, we pit our choices against each other to have that kind of metric and that way to measure our decisions. But that pressure just adds to the context of, am I doing this right? Am I good enough? Am I selfless enough? Am I all of these things that I'm supposed to be as an ideal mother? And then add to this, we have the context of the way in which we as women experience anger. The research suggests that most women are taught to internalize their anger. As we grow up, we're not supposed to express our anger. Anger seems inappropriate for a woman. For a man, it is biologically normal. It's the way that men express their emotion. It's their testosterone. But for females, when we show emotion, when we show anger, we're hormonal, we're crazy, we're unstable, we're all of those things. When in reality, this emotion exists. This is something that we feel as a human being. There are certain circumstances and contexts that will make us feel angry. And yes, everyone, men included, have the ability to regulate their emotions and express that anger in a healthy way. We're taught to deny its existence, to keep it concealed, to keep it tamped down. And often that makes us internalize that, to say, I feel angry, I shouldn't feel angry, so I'm going to be angry at myself for being angry. And the researchers state that despite the potential normalcy and validity of anger, mothers hesitate to talk about it out of fear of being seen as a bad mom and experiencing shame. They're even hesitant to seek out help or support due to that shame of feeling like I'm a bad mom for feeling anger. So there's the foundation. We as moms are under a lot of maternal stress. We have a lot of things we have to worry about all of the time. And add to that, we have some really unrealistic social expectations that we are supposed to be selfless and that we're supposed to be these intensive parents who give everything to their children at all costs, no matter the circumstances, and who are responsible for everything that our child experiences. And lastly, we don't know how to express our anger. We don't feel like we should be angry. And so when we experience it, we don't know what to do with it. And we really just beat ourselves up for having that anger. Now, the study. This took place with 65 different participants of various backgrounds at various stages of their parenting journey. They gave them a questionnaire and asked them 10 open-ended questions. The two main questions were to describe what mom rage looks like for you and to describe a recent episode of mom rage and how you interpreted it. After compiling the research and after what seems like coding this a couple of times and reworking the data a couple of times, they came up with 7 things that led to an episode of mom rage. I found a lot of these to be true for me, so I'd love for you to comment down in the description if any of these align with things that you've experienced so that we can continue to normalize that this happens and that you're not the only one who has experienced this. Number 1 is child behavior, something that the child did that led to a triggering of a mom rage episode. This could be something like an argument, a sibling fight, not listening, or just doing something that the parent deems as unacceptable in that moment. I would say this was a contributing factor to my episode of mom rage. All of the things that my son was doing, every time he did them, the heat in my chest just got hotter and boiled up, and every scream, every laugh was like a poke the bear kind of feeling. And while my emotions are my responsibility, his actions were just a constant triggering of that internalized anger. Number 2 is unmet personal needs, meaning mom has needs that are not being met, all while she is constantly meeting the needs of everyone else, often with little to no appreciation. This is one of the biggest reasons that I do what I do, because I see how much resentment and how much strife is in motherhood these days because mom is so put in the background. And clearly, based on this research, it's ending in not great ways. Number 3 goes along with this, and this is when moms felt disrespected or undervalued. And often along with this went a disproportionate amount of mother work or household work perceived by their children or significant others as unappreciated. So they're doing a lot, they're doing more than everybody else, and yet it's still not appreciated by anyone. Number 4 is time-sensitive tasks. I feel like if you haven't had this happen yet, you probably will at some point where you gotta go, you got somewhere to be, and your kids aren't listening. And it's one that I think has happened to all of us as children, probably, maybe not all of us, but I know definitely that was where I would experience the most episodes of mom rage, or my mom maybe snapping at me, is when we needed to be somewhere. She needed us to do something now, and we weren't doing it now. And as a mom now, sorry mom, that was really not great, and I apologize, and I understand where you were coming from. Again, there are resources how we can better help our children do what we need them to do in the time frame that we need them to do that in, but doesn't always work, and there's definitely a justification for feeling some anger here. Number 5 is work identity conflict, where work responsibilities and parenting responsibilities are conflicting, or we're multitasking. We have all of these things pulling our attention at the same time. Just as an aside here, Amy Taylor-Boz has a great book called Mama Rising, and she has a chapter on this about how when we multitask and when our attention is pulled in too many different areas, that this is where we're more likely to snap because we lose a lot of our mindfulness. Number 6 is self-sacrifice. This is another one I fight against all of the time, and I get a lot of flack for. But this is where mothers felt they were assumed or expected to be selfless, and yet they weren't recognized for how much they were giving and how much they were not receiving. And they felt like they still needed to do it all and be it all without a thank you. And I talk a lot about being a selfish mom, that I think you as a mom will think of yourself less. You have to think about everybody else, and in turn you do think about yourself less. But I think you still need a sense of self. I think you deserve to be a self, and you don't need to be selfless without self. But I get a lot of pushback from people when I talk about that. Because clearly, again, the feeling of not having a sense of self, of putting yourself aside all the time for everyone else, doesn't end well. And number 7 was physiological phases. So things like PMS, things like postpartum, things that impacted our actual physiology, that impacted our mood, our energy, our ability to regulate our emotions. So again, I have definitely experienced a lot of those things on that list. Not all of them have led to mom rage episodes, but having experienced them, I could see how they would, especially with some of those mounting stressors that we talked about. And the second piece was, how do moms feel about this mom rage? It really seems that their understanding of this mom rage was highly framed by the societal expectations of moms that we talked about at the beginning of this video, and that importance of maternal bliss and that idealized version of motherhood being at such conflict with episodes of mom rage. So there are 4 main themes here. Number 1 is that they felt like they were failing the ideal mother standard, that having anger or having episodes of mom rage was not aligned with this traditional version of motherhood that is all calmness and all happiness all of the time. Number 2 is they felt like there was a stigmatization against this mom rage, that they didn't want to share their experience with anyone. They didn't want anyone to find out about it. They didn't want to reach out for help because they felt like they had failed as mothers by doing this thing that is so taboo and that we don't talk about. And this plays into a really important framework that I learned from Nikki McCune, and this is the cycle of silence. And this is where a mom experiences an episode of mom rage, but because of the shame that she feels or is afraid of feeling, she doesn't say anything. She stays silent. And so then she stays silent. Then another mom experiences mom rage, but because no one's talking about it, because everyone's staying silent, she feels like she's the only one. And so she doesn't say anything out of fear of shame and out of fear of being stigmatized. And so she stays silent. And then another mom experiences it. And we all feel like we're alone in these experiences that we're not alone in, but because no one's talking about it, we do feel alone. This is, I think, a really great example of that. Number 3 is mom guilt. The participants expressed that they often cried and apologized, but continued to feel worse because they believed they should have been able to have better control over their emotions. And this is 1000% what I felt after my experiences with mom rage. I do still believe that I could have done more, but that was a big learning experience for me. But at the time, that guilt I felt and still feel, I wish I could have done it a little bit differently. That guilt was very pervasive. And number 4 is concern for the child. The mother's worried about the safety of their child and about the potential negative side effects of having their mom lose their temper at them. They also worried what that child would experience if someone found out about this episode, if they told somebody. Then this has a whole other layer of complexity to the situation. And when it comes to the safety of the child, I think talking about this anger, talking about the fact that we don't know how to express our anger is critical, because until we learn why we're doing what we're doing, until we learn how to stop, things do escalate and kids do get hurt, and that is not okay. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's that this is complex. Your mom rage is not as simple as you just losing your temper. It is a combination of all the stressors in your life, of all the expectations placed upon you, and the fact that as women, we are not taught how to express our anger, and things explode. And I'm not justifying this behavior. I don't think mom rage should be normal. I think we should have the tools and the resources to be able to process this anger and to be able to express it in a healthy way, to be able to manage our emotions in those settings. But right now, we don't have that. And when it comes to the safety of our children, we do need that. What this research really does is it highlights the importance of being able to accept anger as a valid emotion and to recognize that this mom rage is making an impact on our lives, on our children's lives, and our relationships as mother and child. Acknowledging that you're gonna feel angry as a mom sometimes, and that doesn't make you a bad mom, that makes you a human. And I talk a lot about enjoying motherhood. I believe that you deserve to enjoy motherhood, and I believe right now that society has made that really hard. And part of enjoying motherhood is not having extremes like this. It's having anger and being able to express that anger and move on and get back to feeling content in motherhood. And so I would love to do a part 2 on this to talk about strategies for managing anger, for managing mom rage, for flipping this around. But right now I want to leave you with just a few things that have helped me. One, it's focusing on the repair, to focus on how do I apologize? How do I teach my son what happened to me in that moment and what I'm going to do about it moving forward? And the more I continue to have that conversation, hopefully he can see that fights do happen, but we can have them in healthier ways and we can have a healthy repair. And that's something that my husband and I also work on in our marriage, about having healthier fights, having better fights, and being able to repair in a constructive way, and something that we can all learn from. I also think having someone to talk to is absolutely critical here. I talked to my therapist about this multiple times, and she's given me really great strategies for how to manage it. One of them is to come into the moment and to find different things to focus on, then that triggering event. So to take some deep breaths and focus on 5 things I can see, 4 things I can hear, 3 things I can touch, 2 things I can smell, and 1 thing I could taste. And that helps me to pull away from the trigger and focus in on something else and just kind of give myself the space to process and to figure out what I'm going to do here. I use BetterHelp. I'll put a link down below for a free week. I know there's a lot of controversy there, but I've had wonderful experiences there, especially when you are a busy mom and you can't leave your house very often, or you don't want to leave your house very often. BetterHelp, I've been a member for 3 years and it's been life-changing. I'd love to bring an expert on here to talk about mom rage with me, to talk about what do we do about it, how do we better express our anger, what are some tools that we can use to work through our anger before we boil up and explode, because I think that's what this all, no pun intended, but boils down to, is that we need more support, we need more resources, and we need to know that it's okay to feel these negative emotions in motherhood. If you want to read this whole research article, I will link it down below. It was absolutely fascinating. I'll link my coaching services as well. I am a matrescence educator and supporter, so I can help to walk through some of these emotions in a coaching aspect. I will also link the pre-sale information for my journal and planner. This is an awesome tool for taking some time for yourself in the morning, just 5 minutes to process some of the emotions you may be feeling, to express gratitude, and to record some wonderful motherhood memories, to focus on some of those enjoyable pieces. And if you like this video, if you think it'd be helpful, please share this. I think that this is something that needs to be talked about more, and I think this article does a wonderful job of recognizing how complex this actually is. And of course, like, subscribe, comment, all of those fun things. And as always, thank you for being here. Welcome, mama. You deserve to enjoy this. Yeah, I'm sorry. So,